Welcome to the show. This is the Frankly Fantasy Football Podcast. We are your hosts, Frankie and Johnny. Frankie, I just want to say hello to the man, the myth, the legend, back for Season 3, kicking off Season 3. Frankie, welcome, my friend. How are you, brother?
Doing great, John. Welcome back, brother. Holy shit, man. Let's go. I'm fired up.
So excited, man. We're back for Season 3. Fantasy football season is upon us. Frankie, just so you know, this is the last month without football. These are the last 8 days, 9 days without football until February of 2024. How does that make you feel, brother?
Well, I think we got a drop for it, John, because you know what I'm going to do.
Now, right off the bat, you're making me just run right into the drops that I haven't seen. I know what you're going to do, Frankie.
I'm going to come.
Yeah.
Can't wait, John. And to tell you what's going to be awesome, man, is we got the Hall of Fame game coming up on August 3rd, and our Brownies, guys, are going to be playing against the Jets in the hometown of Canton. I am pumped up, man. So to your point, when we hear, right, that we have football back until March of 2024, I have goosebumps fucking everywhere, man.
Absolute goosebumps. So excited, man. I'm ready. It's been a long off season, just waiting for this to happen, waiting to get into some fantasy football here. Hey, we've got our gear. We got the Frankly Fantasy t-shirts on. All right. We're rocking the cups as well. Shout out to all of our fans and family members that have gotten us Frankly Fantasy gear. Drinking my Liquid IV out of this one here as well. All right. Well, hey, we've got a great show for you guys today. Kicking things off like we always do. We've got our news and notes. We're going to kick off with a little Would You Rather, comparing a few players together. And then we've got the meat and potatoes of today's show is our rookie review. Over the next 2 weeks here, we're going to be reviewing the rookies coming in. There are some fantasy relevant rookies here, and we've seen in years past how they can have an effect on your team. We're going to break that down. Frankie's gone through some film. Frankie's research he does on this is absolutely incredible. His knowledge of the college players and what their stats are and how they compare to other players that you may be familiar with. This is a great episode to get familiar with these rookies because some of these guys will be on your teams. Some of them will have some fantasy impact here. So today we're going to go through our top 10 is going to be 10 through 6. And then next week we're going to get into the top 5 through 1. So let's get ready here. Frankie, let's do a little Would You Rather. What do you think about that, man?
Would you rather poke a stick up in your eye or eat a bag of shit? Sit up on a pineapple or throw it on her dick? I said, would you rather?
All right. So today's Would You Rather, it is the rookie review. So what we thought we'd do is let's take two guys that were rookies last year. We've got a very small sample size of these guys. They did not own the backfields to themselves. So we're going to look into these guys and see they're similar in ADP. Which of these guys would you rather have on your team and why? Frankie's going to get into some serious knowledge on these guys. We've got two running backs from last year. So who we're going to compare right now is Kenneth Walker. Great picture there, Frankie. I love that one. Oh, look at that Lions fan.
Lions or Chargers, right? Whoever it is.
Yeah, actually, that might be Chargers. I see a little bit of yellow around it. Yeah, I love that. So we're going to be talking about Kenneth Walker, the third running back for the Seattle Seahawks, second-year man. And we're also going to be talking about Rashad White, second-year running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So these guys, difficult for me to choose. Two guys I'm not absolutely in love with that I have to have on my team. But based on where they're going, these are guys that I am looking to target, though. I think that they can definitely bring some good depth to your fantasy team. All right, Frankie, let's kick it off with Kenneth Walker here. We got some great stats here. Why don't you roll out an argument to be made about Kenneth Walker? What's going on with him? How did he do last year? And what do you think his fantasy outlook for this year is?
Guys, Kenneth Walker was dynamic last year. When he got the opportunity, when Rashad Penny went down, he took it by storm, took that opportunity and ran with it. No pun intended. But so the thing with Kenneth Walker, guys, as you can see here with these stats, and for those listening, what we have listed is, and shout out to Player Profiler, right? Like they do an awesome job with stats. I want to make sure I give them a shout because they have done something that I, John, have not seen before. they've actually been able to break out what their 40-yard dashes was, some of the speed scores, things of that nature. But then in addition to this, they actually put the stats down below. And what, for the listeners here, what you're looking at or what you're listening to is games being played, rushing attempts, rushing yards, things of that nature. And what was fascinating with Kenneth Walker, guys, is he had over 1,000 yards rushing in his rookie year. He had 27 receptions, right? He did have over 150 yards receiving. And what happened in this sense, right, is that when we break it down to a half PPR, because we always want to stay in the middle, right? We're not talking standard. We're not talking full PPR. We want to give you that middle ground. And from a fantasy perspective and fantasy points, he had 199 fantasy points, just shy of 200 in half PPR. Very, very quality. Now, John, what's interesting, now we're thinking draft, right? We're strategizing for the drafts coming up. Do I take Kenneth Walker based on this situation at hand with Seattle? Well, what's fascinating is his ADP, his average draft position, is number 33. So what that means, guys, is he's going in the third round. Now, John, you can say, okay, hey, he's the number 14 running back overall by ECR, expert consensus rankings. He's going in the third round right now. Is that a guy you want to potentially anchor your team on? Because if you end up going receiver, or receiver quarterback, he's going to have to be your RB1. And here's the problem that I have, John. And I'm going to start with the problem because there's a lot of good as well. But the problem is, who did Seattle just draft? They drafted a dynamic running back by the name of Zach Charbonnet in the second round. In the second round, you're not drafting a second round running back if you're not planning on playing him a bit. Okay? And the other interesting thing about Zach Charbonnet is he brings a different caliber of play than that of Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker's a bruiser, right? Things of that nature. Zach Charbonnet, he's a little bit shifty. He's a bigger guy still, but he's still more elusive than that of Kenneth Walker, and he catches the passes a little bit more out of the backfield than that of Kenneth Walker. So the other interesting thing is that Kenneth Walker was hurt last year. For those of you that had him, the injuries sucked, right? That was really brutal to overcome, especially towards the tail end of the year. And so walking into this year, right, you have a guy who was just drafted in Seattle with Zach Charbonnet. You have the injury kind of history already with Kenneth Walker. And drafting somebody like that in the third round, it's tough. But here's the good news, John. He is the starter at this point in time. Number one on a run-heavy first offense and a Pete Carroll type of offense. And number two, there's no more Rashad Penny. So now it goes from, okay, Kenneth Walker sharing time with Rashad Penny, and you had Travis Homer getting in there and a few others. Well, now it's Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. So it's much lesser of a competitive backfield than what it was last year. So for me, John, the question is, are you willing to take Kenneth Walker in the third round? It's pretty high.
Yeah, third round does feel a little high to me. I mean, I'm much more comfortable with him in the fourth round. If he can fall to me in the fourth, I absolutely love it because you're right. He is alone in that backfield. Yes, they drafted Zach Charbonnet, who we're going to talk about in today's episode. But again, it's a rookie running back. It's going to take him a while to get in there. So when you're drafting Kenneth Walker as your RB2, hopefully, if you've gone heavy with maybe a quarterback, maybe a Travis Kelce, or you've gone receiver, I would feel okay with Kenneth Walker as my number one running back, especially in the beginning of the season. I mean, the first 5 games, if you're breaking things out in fantasy, I like to look at it in quarters,
Love that.
And I'm focused on that first quarter because I know that my team's going to change drastically, come week 4, 5, 6, So yeah, in the beginning, I think he's very safe. But that, Zach Charbonnet is sniffing his asshole there, breathing down his neck. It's definitely a concern. I mean, anytime you draft a running back in the second round, that guy doesn't sit the bench the whole year. That guy will play. He's going to get involved. And I think it's going to be, more and more as the season goes on. But I think early on, yes, I think he's a very solid play. He does run, like kind of like a Kareem Hunt style where he's very violent when he runs. And unfortunately, he pays a price for that as well. So that is a risk. But the reward is a 50-yard touchdown on any given play. I mean, this guy can explode. I think the other positives, they've got possibly one of the best trios of receivers in the league right now. Yep. They just drafted a rookie. I mean, Jackson
Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, your boy from OSU,
That's right.
OH, baby.
I-O.
There you go. But he's a stud. I mean, he's an absolute stud. And we'll get into him, I think, in next week's episode. But having DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith and Jigba on the outside, he's not going to see a lot of stacked boxes. So that's a positive for Kenneth Walker as well. So yeah, I feel good about it. Again, I would love to have him in the 4th. I think it's a slam dunk in the 4th, Definitely. Or if you're at the turn in the 3rd round. But getting him early 3rd round, I don't love it. I'd be okay with it, but not loving it.
I agree, John. So
okay.
With Rashad White, let's pull up that graph too.
Yeah, because let's get to the comparison here with Rashad White. There we go.
Beautiful, beautiful. So again, shout out to Player Profile here. Now, what you're seeing here, and for those listening in, it was a different story with Rashad White, right? We're not talking 1,000-yard guy from a rushing perspective, but what we are talking about is 50 receptions, 50 in a shared backfield with that of Leonard Fournette. Okay, we talked about Kenneth Walker having 20-something receptions. We're doubling that now with Rashad White. And what was also fascinating is Rashad White played 17 games, right? So he was durable from this point. Now, again, he did share time with that of Leonard Fournette and occasionally that of Keyshawn Vaughn. But his rush attempts were much less than that of Kenneth Walker. His rush yards were much less. But again, the full package, he's an interesting player. He's very interesting. So to break Rashad White down a bit, Rashad White had 112 points, fantasy football points last year in half PPR. Okay, much less than that of Kenneth Walker. But his ADP, John, his average draft position is 66. Guys, what that means is he's going in the 6th round. Okay, so you're now getting 3 additional values of round in comparison to that of Kenneth Walker. Okay, so his ECR expert consensus ranking is that of 26th overall running back, which is pretty interesting. And so when we start peeling back that onion a bit further, what's going on with Rashad White's situation, right? We talked about the good, the bad, the ugly with that of Kenneth Walker. What's happening here? Well, some of the problems, we'll start there, is that Tampa Bay is a dumpster fire right now, right? In terms of quarterback, right? They have Baker Mayfield. They're not really sold on him. There were talks of the defensive guys trying to get Tom Brady back in the building, right? And then you have Kyle Trask, who is completely unproven in the NFL, was very good at Florida, but has just not had his opportunity. And on top of that, guys, the O-line has been banged up. We saw what happened with their starters. They had 3 starting offensive linemen that were out last year just on serious injuries. And then they signed Chase Edmonds, right? So, and on top of it, with the bad quarterback play, what do you think defenses are going to do? They're going to start stacking that box a bit more, right? And so it's a bit tougher of a situation from the problems perspective of Rashad White. But the positive is gold. And what I mean by this is, yes, he's on a bad team in terms of an offense from a quarterback play. But where did he thrive last year was receptions. Where is he going to thrive this year? Receptions. If Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask is at the helm, they are going to be dumping off to that of Rashad White. So his receptions per game are going to increase. I would say, John, he has a legitimate opportunity to have around 65, 70 receptions this year, knowing that he is the back, knowing that he is the sole back in that backfield with no longer Leonard Fournette. And so with the opportunity there, that's what makes this enticing. I think he has an opportunity as well to come close to that mark of 1,000 yards rushing this year. I could see him having 800 yards rushing, 750 yards rushing, and I could see him having 400 to 500 yards receiving. I really could see this being very similar to that of old school Alvin Kamara if he's given the opportunity. So guys, for me, when we're looking at now value, right? Because that's what this is about. Would you rather? Do you want to take, John, and I want to ask you this, are you taking Kenneth Walker in the 3rd? Okay? Or are you willing to take a Rashad White in the 6th, knowing the team that you can build before Rashad White, you even would be drafting him? Or are you going to be kind of anchoring your running back team or running back squad on that of Kenneth Walker? What would you do?
Straight up value. Obviously, I like the value of the 6th round. If these guys are close enough that we're wondering which one we'd rather have, I always take the better value. I always take the later guy. But it's going to depend on roster construction as well. because I think Rashad White is going to be a much more steady Eddie, a much safer. I think his floor is going to be higher than Kenneth Walker. I think his ceiling is much, much lower, though. I think Kenneth Walker has that ability to bust out just a typical off-tackle run for 50 yards and a touchdown. Rashad White, we really haven't seen that. We haven't seen huge play potential out of him. The one thing that does concern me, we talk about receptions and you see 50 and you're like, well, shit, he's going to be more involved. He should have a lot more than that. Don't forget, last year, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers threw the ball more than anybody else in the entire league.
Good point.
And it was Tom Brady. It was definitely a check down Charlie. This is a 45-year-old Tom Brady that liked throwing to running backs, which he always has wanted to do. But the good news is Baker Mayfield is the same way. We've seen what he's done with Kareem Hunt. He does check the ball down quite a bit and tries to extend the play, dumps off to the running back. So I could see him doing, the same receptions, if not more. I do see upside in the receiving area for him, and not having a Leonard Fournette problem is a huge plus for him. Behind him, you've got Chase Edmonds they brought on. Chase Edmonds, in my mind, he's just done. He's washed up. We didn't see anything out of him last year. They were really hesitant to even use him last year, which, is definitely a red flag. So I'm not concerned with his, backups there with Chase Edmonds, who will come in for some third down work, and Keyshawn Vaughn. I'm just not concerned at all. This is Rashad White's backfield to take and to screw up. I think he's going to be very solid. So if I'm constructing a roster where I've got, I need a guy who's going to have that high floor, I'm taking Rashad White later. If, I do want that home run hitter in the third round, which unfortunately with with Kenneth Walker, the third, I think taking him in the third round, I think you're drafting him at his ceiling. Yeah. That's what I don't like. There's a couple of guys, and we'll talk about this on the podcast, where they're great players and they're going to perform very well, but you're taking them in the draft at their ceiling. They have to be great in order to bring back that value. Rashad White does not have to be great to bring back 6th round value for you. Exactly. He can be that steady guy who gets you 9 to 13 points every week as your RB2, and you're very, very happy about that. You litter in some receiving, you litter in a few touchdowns here and there inside the goal line. So yeah, I do have concerns with Rashad White with the offensive line. This is not the offensive line that Tom Brady started in Tampa Bay with. They've got some real issues there. But I think just a sheer volume play and the sheer upside of the receiving work, I really like Rashad White. Yeah,
I'm with you, John. Right. If we're talking, would you rather? I'm leaning Rashad White, guys.
Really, That's interesting. Yeah, and I've got no problems at all with Kenneth Walker. I think he's a great player. I love him. I just think it's all situational here. And I just think Rashad White's going to get more volume. I think he's a less risky play. Kenneth Walker is that home run hitter running back for you, but it comes with some risk, and it comes with risk of a high draft capital running back behind his ass as well. All right, man. Sounds good. I think we came to a conclusion there on that, man. Let's get to some news and notes, baby.
Absolutely lost.
News and notes.
All right, missed that news and notes drop. Thank you to Anthony Sestone for the drop, for the Would You Rather, and for the news and notes drop. Love that, man. All right, let's get to some news here. It's been a while since we've been out. We're not going to talk about all of the changes and all the guys that have signed. I've got recent news on here. We're going to do our new faces and new places. We're going to do 2 episodes of that coming up here in a couple of weeks. So we'll go through all of the free agents that have signed with all the new teams here. But let's get into the news over the past 2 weeks or so here. Isaiah Pacheco, running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, says he's going to be ready for week 1 after off-season shoulder and hand injuries. Isaiah Pacheco, we're not sure if he's going to be the starter or if Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be the starter. Definitely fantasy value on there, but we're going to have to see how camp plays out to really make some decisions on which running backs we like about that. And we may have to have a segment, Frankie, talking about a would you rather as far as Chiefs running backs.
That would be fun.
There's 3 of them there, and we're going to have to figure out what role all these guys are going to have. All right, next guy, Breece Hall, running back for the New York Jets, on the PUP list. which is actually a good thing. Don't freak out about that. That means that, they're at least getting status on these guys prior to camp. He's recovering from the ACL injury that ended his season. He can be activated anytime during training camp. Now, this is a big one to watch. Breece Hall is going, second round right now? He was on pace to be Rookie of the Year last year, an offensive Rookie of the Year. Absolute stud. Now he's got Aaron Rodgers in his backfield. They've got just a stud receiving core. Breece Hall set up for a really, really nice season, but we're going to have to pay attention. Let's see what he does in camp when they activate him. That's going to affect his ADP. Absolutely. All right, Josh Jacobs. Let's talk about a couple of running backs here, Frankie, that, these are first-round guys. There's two of them here that we've got some contract issues, man. It's not all, hey, here's the list of the top 10. Let's see who you like and pick them. This is going to make a decision here on when you draft these guys, if you draft them at all. Josh Jacobs, running back for the Las Vegas Raiders, not expected at camp, possibly absent, quote, for a long time. Frankie, what the hell is going on with Josh Jacobs, and how scared should we be on your shit meter? How shitty are your pants right now?
I'm pretty shitty. Like out of 1 to 10, John, I'm like probably floating around that 7.5 shit. So
okay, that's watery. That's your pants are wet. Good. You got to throw them away. That's not good. 7 is not good on the shit meter. No. Yeah.
And the reason being, guys, is because Josh Jacobs was an absolute workhorse last year. He established his best across the board with 1,653 yards rushing. He had 340 carries. He also had 12 rushing touchdowns. Guys, he was the NFL leading rusher last year. And the problem is that they were not able to come to a consensus on a long-term deal. So technically, Josh Jacobs could end up still playing this year, and he'll be playing on the tag. I think it's a little bit more likely than that of the other that we're going to talk about here in just a second, John. But the reason why I'm nervous is because if he was to play, he can technically wait to sign for a very long time, and there's no penalty during training camp for him. So he's not losing anything outside of being with the team, the camaraderie, right? Understanding, right? Even more so the playbook, and even though it's pretty seamless, but with Jimmy G now being there, there's a difference in the quarterback, right? So there's a lot of things that are the intangibles, you could say. But for me, man, I could see him end up coming back. It's just going to be a later point in time. But the problem is when you're thinking about drafting Josh Jacobs, John, that's where this gets super difficult. Because if you're willing to take him in round 1 or early round 2, you better damn hope you have a backup. Actually, you probably should go 2 running backs again right after that, because you're going to need that just in case. Because if he were to hold out until week 5, or maybe I don't see him holding out for the rest of the year, like it's unlike Saquon's situation. I would be nervous heading into this. And guys, just so you know what this looks like from a contract perspective, he has not signed his franchise tag, which means that if he does sign it, he's only in quotes going to be getting $10 million. And so to put that in perspective, that's significantly under what he should be getting paid. Because right now, there's only six other running backs across the NFL that are making over that 10 million mark. That's Christian McCaffrey, that's Nick Chubb, Melvin Kamara, it's Derrick Henry, that's Joe Mixon, and that's Aaron Jones. Okay, and so when you stack rank Josh Jacobs against those other 6, John, I think I'm putting him, maybe 3rd on that list, behind that of Nick Chubb and CMC, maybe tied with Derrick Henry in some aspects, even though he's younger, a little bit more durable than Derrick Henry potentially has been in terms of longevity and less like serious injuries. It's going to be really interesting. But for me, man, I could see Josh Jacobs coming back, weathering the storm, playing on the tag, and then becoming a free agent next year.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So be careful. Frankie's at a 7 on the shit your pants meter. So just be careful when you're in that end of the first round, beginning of the second round, staring at Josh Jacobs. You're going to have to keep an eye on him, see how things are going here. You may not have an answer at all. So plan accordingly. All right, the next guy we're going to talk about here, Frankie, very similar situation. Saquon Barkley, running back for the Jets, will not report to camp right now.
No.
Oh man, do we have to bring back an old drop? This is 2 years old, man, from season 1, but our Saquon Barkley drop, hey, I got to do it, man.
Sometimes when I wipe, I'll wipe and I'll wipe and I'll wipe and I'll wipe 100 times. Still poop.
Let me check that.
It's like I'm wiping a marker or something.
All right. This was a drop we played because Saquon, he missed an entire season. He came back and he was just poop. He really was. Now, he came back with a vengeance last year, and that was something that we did call. We were very confident about Saquon. He is deservingly a first-round draft pick this year, and I think he's going to be an absolute stud. He's healthy. He carried the team. He did everything for this team. I don't blame him for holding out whatsoever, but we're looking at a very difficult situation now, Frankie. Yeah. So what's happening with Saquon? Are we still wiping? Is this going to be that season where week one comes around and we don't have answers and you're going to be wiping and it's still going to be poop for a couple of weeks?
Very much so. This one, John, I'm a little bit freaking out. And I say that for a variety of reasons, guys. This is why this is slightly different than Josh Jacobs. Giants just signed James Robinson. They also drafted a guy in the 4th or 5th round this year, and they have Matt Breida. Okay, so they're stacking their running back room right now in potential thought that Saquon might not actually show up. In addition, Saquon was also on a podcast, the Money Matters podcast, and it was published in July 11th. It was awesome. And he literally came out and said, my leverage, and this is, I quote, my leverage, if I could say, fuck you to the Giants, I could say, fuck you to my teammates and be like, you want me to show you my worth and you want me to show you how valuable I am to the team. I won't show up and I won't play it down. Now, he did go on to say, like, he needs to do some serious thinking and things of that nature. But the problem with Saquon's contract, guys, is that the Giants could technically, they already franchise tagged him this year. He's not signed. But they could also franchise tag him next year. Saquon he might not be an unrestricted free agent like that of Josh Jacobs. And so technically, if he were to sign this year and the Giants were to tag him again next year, right, Saquon would only be making $22 million for 2 years, which is significantly under the market, in my opinion, for his talent and what he's been able to do in regards to these other running backs. Like, you're telling me Aaron Jones, you're telling me Joe Mixon. Now, Joe Mixon did just restructure, but you're getting what I'm putting down. It's different. That's a different situation. And on top of it, Josh Jacobs' situation, guys, he had Devontae Adams. He has Hunter Renfrow. He has a bunch of other studs around him. Truly, the Giants had Saquon Barkley. That was it. Mm-hmm. If you don't talk to me about Richie James, don't talk to me about Isaiah Hodgins, right? And then you're sitting there and you're seeing your quarterback getting paid $40 million a year, and he was average at best. Yeah. That's what would piss me off if I was in Saquon's shoes. So when you're talking about, okay, the shit meter, am I freaking out or am I not freaking out? I'm totally freaking out here because of all of those things. And I could actually see Saquon potentially saying, screw you, and trying the Le'Veon Bell route. Now, that's been proven the last few years, it hasn't worked out with the Le'Veon, Melvin Gordon, and a few others. It's backfired heavily. But Saquon right now is in an opportunity to reset this running back market, right? With Austin Eckler's contract coming up here soon and a few others that are thinking, hey, if Saquon isn't getting this, knowing the level of talent here, I'm going to get screwed. And so I could see some powwow happening to where a big holdout occurs. And then we're going to see the Giants really shit down their leg without having their guy that they've leaned on for years. So, John, yeah, I'm freaking out if I'm a Giants fan, and I'm freaking out if I'm planning on drafting Saquon because you don't know what could happen. And there goes your first round pick.
Yeah. And the thing that's difficult here, I mean, you're looking, first round, early second round is you're anchoring your team with these guys.
Yeah.
And you're looking at, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs. I mean, that's the tier of player you're looking at. And right now, I'm sorry, I'm steering away from Saquon. I'm steering away from Josh Jacobs. I've got Nick Chubb. I've got Derrick Henry above all of those guys, just because you don't have to worry about contract situation. These guys were paid. These guys are, perennial studs. Josh Jacobs and Saquon, it's just scary right now, man. It just is. All right. Thanks for bringing some light to us on that, Frankie. All right. DeAndre Hopkins, D-Hop, wide receiver, now signed with the Titans. He's got a 2-year, $26 million deal, 31 years old. All right. So we've got a couple of good years, which is why they signed him to a 2-year deal, I'm sure. All right, Frankie, DeAndre Hopkins, D-Hop, now with the Titans. He's got Ryan Tannehill. He's got Derrick Henry. He's got Treylon Burks. How does this affect, how do you feel about D-Hop, and how does this affect everyone else around him right now? We don't need to get into huge detail because we're obviously going to talk about this on our New Faces and New Places, but just give us a little preview, a little taste, a little teaser, if you will.
I think that from a fantasy football perspective, I think that he is worth a 7th round pick. If he falls to the 7th round, I think it's worth snagging D-Hop. I also can tell you this much. This is where veteran receivers have gone to die, and it has been to Tennessee. So need to keep that in mind. Again, I don't want to give too much away, John. I'm really excited to hit on this during New Faces and New Places. But guys, this is something to keep in mind.
Robert Woods, Julio Jones, you know,
many others.
Yeah, that is
Andre Johnson, Randy Moss, right? The list goes on and on. I mean, it is pretty ridiculous. So yeah, I think that it's going to be interesting. I'm glad that he got paid. Good for you, man. But I think that from a fantasy perspective, I think that he's worth a mid-round pick at this point in time. And I think it could actually bolster that of Treylon Burks at just a tad. So now all of the defensive plays and just there on Treylon Burks. But we'll get to that a little bit more.
Yeah. I think there's quarterback questions there. Are they going to bring in, was
Will Levis?
Rookie? Will Levis, yeah. They're going to bring him in at some point. There could be a quarterback change. How is that going to affect Treylon Burks? Could it be positive? Could it be negative? I'm sure we're going to get into that in greater detail. And it is a run-first offense with Derrick Henry. I mean, it just is. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting, man. We'll get into more detail on D-Hop, but interesting landing place that I think has more questions than answers right now. I think that'll change. His ADP will go up once they start showing some of those one-handed catches in camp and getting the hype train out, you know. All right, Joe Mixon, running back for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's staying with the Bengals. This is a great move on his part. He sees what the running back market looks like out there. He restructured his contract. I think he was due to make around $8 million, and they restructured it to about $6 million. Not a huge restructure, but a good move for him. I mean, he was definitely, they can easily say goodbye to him, and he's going to go to a different team and probably not be in the AFC Championship again. So good move by Joe Mixon, still with the Bengals. Javonte Williams, running back for the Denver Broncos, hopes to be cleared for training camp after his Week 4 ACL tear. This is another guy, when you're looking at drafting him, he may miss some time. We're not sure. We're going to have to see how things go in camp. Absolute stud for sure. But I could see Denver, they've bolstered a little bit in their backfield. I could see them maybe making a play for someone like a Kareem Hunt or a Dalvin Cook. But Javonte Williams is a guy you may have to sit on your roster for a couple of weeks. All right, Darnell Mooney, wide receiver for the Chicago Bears, says he's, quote, ready to roll for training camp after a season-ending ankle injury. Haven't seen him for quite a while, so it'll be interesting to see Darnell Mooney on the Bears. They've changed up their receiver room a little bit, and, Justin Fields with another year under his belt. We'll see how that goes, but Mooney says he should be good to go for training camp. Keep an eye on that. Jimmy Gorgeous, Jimmy Garoppolo, quarterback now with the Las Vegas Raiders. We're going to get into this, obviously, with New Faces and New Places, but he's optimistic about being at training camp, so that's a good sign. Melvin Gordon. Haven't heard that name for quite a while, Frank. Melvin Gordon is now signed on the Ravens for a 1-year, $3 million deal. Talk to me about Melvin Gordon. Man, I was so high on J.K. Dobbins coming into the season because I think he's just going to be an absolute stud. Does this affect J.K. Dobbins? Is this going to be an annoyance, or is this more of just insurance?
I think it's more insurance at this point in time due to J.K. Dobbins' injury history. But there's a part of me, man. Melvin Gordon still got some left in the tank. We've seen it. The big issue with Gordon, man, fumble fingers. He fumbles the damn ball. And so I think it's more insurance at this point in time. I think this really hinders that of Gus Edwards if you have him in Dynasty and things of that nature. But again, this is one to keep tabs on throughout training camp. If JK's killing it, I still feel really good about JK. But if things are like kind of uneasy, I could definitely see this being more of a split backfield, leaning more like 65-70 JK, 35-30 to that of Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, it gives me like a 2 on the shit my pants meter, basically, for J.K. Dobbins. I don't think it's a big deal, but it's definitely something you're going to have to pay attention to because J.K., what is he, late second, early third round pick, I think, right now.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to keep an eye on that for sure. All right, Dalvin Cook. Let's get to this. Still not signed, man. What the hell is going on with Dalvin Cook? Why is he not on a team? This was a first round pick over the past, 3, 4, 5 years? Yeah, forever. He's not on a team right now. What are the rumors going out there? What's happening with Dalvin Cook?
John, apparently, he had a lot of buzz about him with Miami and the Jets and all this stuff, and there's still some of that there. But the problem is, things started surfacing about a potential suspension, not this year, but 2024, for a domestic violence incident in 2021, to where he actually tried to pay off his ex-girlfriend $1 million. And so it kind of is like this gross, you're not really sure what to do from a team perspective from the NFL. Like, hey, I got to sign this dude to big money. He's worth that contract. But do I sign him and then, a 2-year deal, and then I can't even play him the second year of that, it's 2-year, 3-year deal? And so it gets a lot more sticky. And then from a fantasy perspective, guys, who the hell knows what's going to happen at this point? This is one you really need to stay tuned in with. Because, for this year, it's going to be great. Unless he goes to the Jets, then you got to think about the Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook, or if he goes to Miami, I could see them trading Raheem Mostert at that point in time in Miami and really just running into that with Dalvin Cook and Jeff Wilson. But this is really interesting. So we're going to have to definitely keep tabs on this situation, John.
He's just going to blow up something. I think no matter what happens, I think it's just going to be a disaster. No matter where he goes. Now, if he goes to Miami, I love that. I love it. I think he's going to be a stud. I think it's going to be beautiful. He goes to the Jets, and that is the most annoying possible fucking scenario, man. Because I'm a huge Breece Hall guy. I'm definitely targeting him. He may not start the year, which is fine. I'll sit on him for a few weeks and take somebody like a Rashad White in the 6th round, to cover me for a couple of weeks. Totally. But man, he goes to the Jets, and that's just going to be brutal. We're going to be talking about him, I'm sure, in great detail. But yeah, you're saying could be some shady shit going on in the back end, and not good PR, shit. Huh? Okay, not so woke there, brah. All right, man, that is the news and notes for today. Let's get into the rookie review. Frankie, let's go, baby. Rookie review. Again, Frankie, watching the films like a psychopath, multiple screens. He's got stats up. He's got films. He's watching these guys. Frankie is so good at just giving us an idea of what these guys have done in college, what they're capable of, what their strengths and how that translates into the NFL. And then what Frankie does that I love, he gives us a player comparison. Yep. So that way you can put an image of your head of, when I'm taking this guy, he's this type of receiver. He reminds me of this guy. So when you're constructing your roster, you're going to understand where these rookies will fit in your roster. Do you want the big play touchdown guy? Do you want, the red zone target? Do you want the PPR guy, the slot guy, So you got to pay attention to this kind of stuff. Is he a bruising running back that's going to get goal line carries? Is he a scat back that's going to get, passing out of the backfield? We've got to pay attention to this stuff. And we've got the right guy to give us the information, Frankie. All right, it's beautiful. So we're going to be counting down our top 10 over these next 2 episodes. Today, we're going to do some honorable mentions, and then we're going to do our number 10 through 6. Next week, we're going to do our top 5 then and get into some of those big money guys, which a couple of those guys are high ADPs right now. Yeah. All right, so let's get into it, Frankie. Let's look at some of the honorable mentions here. And these are not guys we listed in the top 10, but they've definitely going to have some effect. A couple of these guys I've been looking at for some insurance policies, maybe on my mock drafts on my teams, or maybe even a flyer. Because we all know that Amon-Ra St. Brown syndrome, man, where the guy just takes off come week 10. If you can sit on him you can pick them up in midseason, get them before they start blowing up towards the end of the season. All right, so talk to me about some of your honorable mentions or your sleeper rookies here, Frankie.
Yeah, definitely, John. So, guys, I'll go through the honorable mentions fairly quickly, right? I definitely don't want to discount them or discredit them by any means. But again, I want to really drill in on some of the top 10 that we feel like are top 10. So the first guy that I want to hit on, Jonathan Mingo, guys, he's the receiver for the Carolina Panthers. He's right now, his average draft position is 178. He's the 66th receiver right now. And the thing about Jonathan Mingo, he's unbelievably athletic. He's very good run blocking, which is huge for that running attack there at Carolina. But in addition, it's a good pair with Bryce Young, right? So his rookie year, guys, he had 51 receptions, 861 yards, 5 touchdowns. His lookalike for me, John, is Deebo Samuel. I just love his ability, his strength on the outside. So really interesting cat. I think you might be able to get in your last round of your fantasy draft just to kind of throw a Hail Mary with him pairing really nice with that of Adam Thielen and that of some Chenault and a few others. And then, okay, John, the other guy that I want to hit on, again, pretty darn quickly here, is Kendre Miller. So I really liked Kendre Miller. He was a running back for the Saints. So they drafted him. And the thing about Kendre is I liked him a lot when Alvin Kamara had a lot of the issues kind of going on, because that I could see opportunity really spiking. Now with Alvin Kamara having those issues kind of complete and done with, they can move on. They also signed Jamal Williams. So again, this is a guy that's really, really deep pool. He's a guy that you want to just keep a tab on throughout the year. But again, what he is, he's a big, tough runner, great size for the NFL. Going to the Saints again, he has a good opportunity there if something were to happen for an injury perspective. Last year, guys, as a running back in college, he had about 1,400 yards rushing. He had 12 receptions for 116 yards, 17 touchdowns. Very, very good talent. Again, keep his name in mind. Just wanted to touch a bit on him. And then here's a guy that I want to spend just a minute on. And I might be a little bit biased here, John. I'm talking Tyler Scott. Shout out, brother, from Norton High School, going to Cincinnati. You know what, man? I absolutely love this dude. And it's not just because I'm a little bit biased here from our hometown. But number one, he's dynamic. They did not have a very good quarterback last year in Cincinnati, and he still performed very, very well. I actually think with him now going to that of the Bears, John, he's walking into an extremely good situation because they did sign DJ Moore. We'll touch on that on the new faces and new places. They do have Claypool. Claypool has been an absolute disappointment since like his rookie year in the NFL. And then Darnell Mooney. John, you just mentioned it, right? He just had season-ending ankle surgery last year, and now he's ready to roll. But what does that mean? Is he going to come back and be, right, that really elusive route runner? The thing that Tyler Scott brings to this offense is a burner. The dude is an absolute stud. Last year for Cincinnati, he had 899 yards, 9 receiving touchdowns, and he had 54 receptions. Guys, a lookalike comparison for Tyler Scott, and I think this is awesome, is Tyler Lockett. Think about Lockett with the downhill approach, right? You're not seeing Tyler Lockett run a lot of really like quick routes. He's not that kind of guy. But what he is he's a downfield, medium to long route type of guy that, right, doesn't take big shots. That's the other thing. Longevity and health there. And so I think Tyler Scott, shout out to you, brother, with your excellent top end speed, guys. He's running a 4.39 40. He can even get down sub to that. Again, walking into a good situation with Justin Fields, right? Those guys having that Ohio dynamic with each other, and he's not having to be a number one or even a number two. It will give him the opportunity to maybe be a sneaky play. So I like Tyler Scott and keeping a tab on him this year, John.
I do too. He's one of those guys I love putting on my roster to see what happens here. And again, it may take a little while, but yeah, the guy can fucking fly, man. Friend of the podcast. So proud. I don't think I've ever watched anyone on draft day, like their live feed. I sat there all draft day watching his live feed on Instagram and followed him, and just I was so proud. I literally had tears in my eyes when the Bears drafted him. It was so proud, man. A Norton boy. We both played high school football at Norton High School. You know, it was just fantastic, man. So proud of him. But yeah, and to have a guy like that make it on the podcast to talk about him as being a rookie sleeper here and looking at putting him on my team, which I'm absolutely willing to do. So I love it, man. That's great.
Really cool.
All right. Who else we got here, buddy?
So going to go to hit on 2 more honorable mentions really quick. We got Anthony Richardson. I'm not putting him in the top 10, guys. You know why? Because fantasy football, there's 12 or 14 spots, right? You're not going to start Anthony Richardson more likely than not. But the reason why he's on honorable mention, John, is if you're in a super flex league, a 2-quarterback league, right? Mm-hmm. He's going to a Colts where he has an opportunity to be very solid. He had the most athletic combine performance ever by a quarterback. He's excellent upside, but the difference with Anthony Richardson compared to this last guy I'm going to talk about is we only have a very small window of sample size that we've seen him, right? He only had 2,500 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. He had almost 700 yards rushing, though, and 9 touchdowns rushing. So very, very good. My lookalike for him, John, is Cam Newton, right? Big, athletic, phenomenal, has a cannon of an arm. But again, I level set expectations here. We're not talking to Joe Burrow, right? Type of guy coming out, right? So just want to make sure I called that out. So Anthony Richardson, very interesting in a 2-quarterback league.
And a practical application with Anthony Richardson. I mean, here's where I've been taking him in mock drafts. It's if I love getting stacks. So if I'm taking a Tyreek Hill or a Jalen Waddle and I want to stack it up with a Tua, which I do love, but Tua, let's face it, he's one shot away from never playing football again.
Yeah.
I mean, really, he gets another concussion and it's probably game over and lights out, quite literally. So I like having Anthony Richardson as kind of an insurance policy or a fun get out of jail free card for my quarterback. If there's an injury or I need somebody as a backup, maybe I take Aaron Rodgers and maybe Aaron Rodgers just isn't lighting up. You know, he's playing well and they're winning, but he's not, going crazy with fantasy stats. Maybe I want a little more upside. Anthony Richardson, just with his rushing floor, could be very similar to like a Justin Fields. Not a lot of passing there. Just the way that offense was built, not a lot of options. Run first offense. But man, I could see him just sneaking in a bunch of touchdowns from inside the 5-10 yard line.
Totally.
That you weren't expecting. So yeah, I love that. I'm going to be keeping an eye on him, and I love throwing him if you can. Roster a second quarterback just for shits and giggles to see if you get a lottery ticket. I like it. I really do. He could be a Lamar Jackson or a Justin Fields light this year.
I agree. Totally agree, John.
And there could be certain situations where you may want to play him over some of those middle. If you waited on quarterback, you grab 2 towards the end. I love grabbing him as my second one. Derek Carr. Yeah. Jimmy G. You want something with a little more explosive. Maybe they're playing against a terrible rushing offense or defense, and you can put him in instead of Jimmy G or Derek Carr and feel real good about it. Try to hit that home run. Yeah. All right. Who else do you have for honorable mentions here, buddy?
Last guy, Bryce Young, right? Quarterback from Alabama, right? We've seen him multiple times on the biggest stages in college, right? He's a fantastic talent, excellent opportunity in Carolina. He also has Andy Dalton that he's learning from. Guys, everything coming out is unbelievable with Bryce Young. He is what he was supposed to be, right? He has that of Thielen, Mingo. He has Miles Sanders now, DJ Chark, Shi Smith, Terrace Marshall. He has a good cast around him. And what's interesting is the reason why I love this guy is because he already played in a pro style offense at Bama. He had 3,300 passing yards, 32 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. And by the way, those are all down in comparison to his prior year. So he was actually better his prior year than that in college. So John, I know this is crazy to say, and this is a bold comparison, but I really, truly believe that Bryce Young has an opportunity to be like that of Drew Brees. I don't say that lightly. And I say that because of his play style, his size, his reads that he's making, and on top of it, he has the smarts. He's brilliant. He's bright. He gets the game, and his football IQ is very high. So for me, John, when we're talking about a 2-quarterback league, I love Bryce Young because they're going to put him in immediately. And I'm not saying to immediately start as your second quarterback. I'm saying maybe you draft 3 quarterbacks and maybe you sit on one for trade value number 1, trade bait number 2. If another quarterback gets down, a team needs to trade, for a second quarterback, because if not, they're going with somebody's shit. Right? Something like that. I love having him or an Anthony Richardson, right? As maybe that 2 or 3 quarterback that I can stash and sit on for a minute and see how this plays out. But I really think there's an opportunity here, man.
Yeah, I think he's sneaky. It's a guy to look at for sure. I mean, the problem, and we're going to be talking about this leading up to the drafts, a ton, because this whole team is brand new. They've completely done a complete reboot. Rookie quarterback, rookie receiver, Adam Thielen coming over, new coach. Yeah, I mean, just a complete reboot. Miles Sanders coming in. It is a run-first offense with a great offensive line. There's going to be a lot of fantasy we're going to be talking about and analyzing with this team, but I do like that as a sleeper. All right, man, let's get into our top, let's see, number 10 through number 6. And let's start with your number 10 guy here, Frankie, Rashee Rice, wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. Anytime the Chiefs draft a guy, we've always got to pay attention because there could be fantasy value there somewhere. So talk to me about Rashee Rice.
John, that's exactly right. That is why he's number 10, is because he has a massive opportunity with Kansas City. Now, let's be real. Kansas City has Kadarius Toney. They have Justin Ross. They have MVS, right? They have Sky Moore. They have a plethora of really good, kind of similar type of receivers. But they drafted this guy for a reason. Now, Kansas City, right, or excuse me, Rashee Rice, he's not the fastest. He's definitely not the strongest, but he worked both in the slot and as an outside receiver. So what that tells me, John, excellent route running capability. Huge for Patrick Mahomes. And then in addition, right, with Juju gone, that slightly opened up the door a bit. That opened up him having an opportunity, guys. So when he was at SMU, he played 12 games. He had 96 receptions, 1,300 yards. He actually had 1,355 yards, 10 touchdowns. My comparison to him, based on his route running capability and his size, is that of Chris Godwin. And so, guys, Chris Godwin, what he did his rookie year in half PPR fantasy was 78 fantasy points. Again, not lighting the world on fire, but a very good comp, except Chris Godwin didn't have Patrick Mahomes throwing him the ball. So that's why I like the opportunity that Rashee Rice, again, we're not talking drafting him in the first 10 rounds. We're not talking drafting him in the first 12 rounds. This is a guy that you can sit on for that 13th, 14th, 15th round that you want super high upside and very minimal risk that you can sit on just to see how this kind of unfolds over the course of the year.
Yeah, he's a flyer. He's a late round, last round potentially flyer, just to see, is there some kind of connection with him and Patrick Mahomes? I mean, I do the same thing with Sky Moore. When you're looking at flyers and your last pick of the draft, who are they connected to? He's connected to Patrick Mahomes, man. I mean, yeah, you got to take the chance. If nothing, you drop him, week 2, week 3, if he's not getting on the field. Or you keep an eye on him and see if he works his way into the roster, mid-season as well. All right. Who do we have at number 9, Frankie? What do you got going on?
Number 9, we got Zach Charbonnet. So we have this guy that we talked about with Kenneth Walker, guys. Second round pick going to Seattle. His ADP right now is 101. ECR, expert consensus ranking. What is he ranked in the running back threshold? 36. Guys, that's no joke, right? That's not a slight. And so what I love about Zach Charbonnet, and I've watched him very intently, he started off in Michigan, went to UCLA. He exploded in UCLA. Okay, he's walking into a very good run-first opportunity type of offense with that of Pete Carroll, as we mentioned again, with the Kenneth Walker and him kind of dynamic team. But here's what he did in 10 games. He had 1,358 yards rushing. He had 14 touchdowns, but this is the difference. He had 37 receptions with 320 receiving yards. What that tells me, guys, versatility. Kenneth Walker does not have that level of versatility, but Kenneth Walker has a much more brute force approach. So it's a little bit different, right? And in a good comparison, guys, if you remember, if you're a college buff like I am, it's UNC with that of Javonte Williams, and now I'm drawing a blank, of course, on the other back. But it was when they had that tandem, right? And it was phenomenal to watch. And so here, again, he's walking into a guy with Kenneth Walker who's had previous injuries. I think that there's absolutely some value here. And absolutely, if you are drafting Kenneth Walker, guys, please think about drafting him as a handcuff. He could be excellent late round. So, comparison. John, I went deep into the bag for this one, man. Guys, for those of you who remember Cedric Benson. This is very similar.
That's a deep pull, man. That's a deep pull right there. Yeah.
Right? Cedric Benson was amazing in Chicago, amazing in Cincinnati, very versatile, right? He had that start and stop capability, very good goal line. Guys, I'm telling you, that's a really good comparison. So again, level setting expectations here, but I would highly recommend if you're thinking Kenneth Walker, you have the ability to take a Zach Charbonnet late rounds. Or if you don't have Kenneth Walker and you still want to screw over somebody who might have gotten Kenneth Walker, take him late round. I love it.
Oh, that's great, man. That's great. And you're not paying anything for him. Again,
Nope.
This is kind of a lottery ticket, player that you're looking at grabbing. But he's going to see the field. So I do think you're going to see this guy pretty early into the season here. All right, man. Who do we have next at where are we at? Number 8 on the list of top rookies here. Who do you got?
So guys, I know this is crazy what I'm going to say, and I believe this. We stacked ranked these specific guys for a reason. I'm going tight end, and I'm going Sam Laporta. So he is another true and tried tight end coming from that of Iowa, right? I don't even need to say the long list. We all know Iowa produces
boys,
top end.
Man. Oh yeah.
Corn-fed boys that know how to play the damn game. He's right now, ADP is 164. He's numbered tight end 20 in ECR. Guys, you're getting him for dirt cheap in fantasy football, and it's crazy. He was a second-round pick to the Lions, and guess who the Lions don't have anymore? They don't have TJ Hawkinson. They had to rotate 3 tight ends, okay, in order to replace that of the production of TJ Hawkinson. So what's fascinating is Sam Laporta is walking into a phenomenal situation, right? Jared Goff, here's another interesting stat. Throwing to tight ends last year, he had a 141.7 rating out of a 158.3. Okay, that's insane. And throwing to that of Wright, he had a 141.7. He had a 139.8 when throwing to Mitchell, and he had a 119 when throwing to Zolstra. Okay, so in 12 games last year with Sam Laporta, what he played in college, he had 58 receptions, 657 yards, 1 touchdown. Iowa didn't leverage him in the red zone is what I think he could be. And so a good comparison, guys, for this type of cat is Zach Ertz. His versatility and the way he approaches the run blocking as well as some of the downfield catching capabilities. I love Zach Ertz, and a very good rookie comparison too, because Zach Ertz's rookie season, he had 89 points in half PPR. That's actually fairly decent for what I see with Sam Laporta. I even think Sam Laporta, based on a situation, can do better than that. So that's why I know it's crazy that I'm putting a tight end in a top 10, right? Especially not the number 1 tight end, but I think based on opportunity and talent, he could be a sleeper for tight ends this year.
Yeah, and I hate rookie tight ends. I mean, it's a much more difficult position to step in as a rookie and learn with the run blocking and with, everything that the route tree that they have to do. It's a difficult position. So no rookie running or tight ends do well. I mean, they just don't. We had Kyle Pitts, a generational talent at tight end.
Still crazy.
Brutal, still brutal, which he was a good receiver. He still, had a lot of yards, but yeah, not the kind of production you're looking for in fantasy football. So yeah, I mean, temper your expectations being a rookie tight end, but the tight end landscape's brutal. If you're waiting on tight end and you've got a deeper bench and you can throw a guy like Sam Laporta on your bench just for the upside potential, it's definitely there. He's in a great situation in Detroit, just surrounded by talent. He could be one of those guys that completely gets forgotten about in the red zone, and he could grab some touchdowns for you. Love it, man. All right. Number 7 on the list. Who do we got, brother?
We're sticking in tight ends, guys. Holy shit.
Oh my God. I just said rookie tight ends suck, and you got 2 tight ends in the top 10.
You got to do it.
You got to do it. Who do we have here, man?
We're going Dalton Kincaid. Guys, for those of you who had the opportunity to watch him in Utah, he is, and I'm just going to say it, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself for the player comparison. This is crazy. I get it. Travis Kelce upside. Okay.
Oh,
and I'm not
God.
saying
You're out of your goddamn
year.
mind. Come on.
I'm not saying this year, but the reason why, John, is because this dude was a basketball player who turned into a football player. Okay.
I don't think that ever works in the NFL. I don't think there's any history of success of any basketball players.
Zero.
Football players.
There's not going to be any Hall of Famers. There's not going to be
whatever.
Antonio
Name
Gates.
2. Name 2. There's nobody.
Right? Jimmy Graham, Antonio Gates, and I can keep going down the line, baby. He's in a great situation, guys, with that of Josh Allen. Now, what's interesting about Kincaid is that he actually played at San Diego and was kind of a no-name guy. And then Utah came in and offered him, and that's when he took off, guys. He had 70 receptions last year, 890 yards, and 8 touchdowns as a tight end. That's ridiculous. Now you're telling me he's coming into play with that of Josh Allen, with a team that didn't really bolster their receiving core much. They have Diggs, they have Gabe Davis, they have Dawson Knox. Yes, that tight end that is very good, that also they just got an extension, right, a couple year. But I'm telling you, you give this cat some time to develop, John, and you get him acclimated with Josh Allen. Von Miller, don't take my words for it, take Von Miller's words for it, or his words for it. He said he is such a freak athlete. He is something special that he has not seen from the tight end position. That is Von Miller. So what I'm telling you is it might not be this year, guys, that he ends up going buck wild nuts due to Dawson Knox. But I am still willing to draft him this year. Right now, he's the 16th tight end in ECR. ADP is 138. If I'm putting my money where my mouth is, I would be okay, maybe even looking at him as a stash just to see how this plays out, because they might put him out as a receiver as well. So very interesting player in Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy, you listen to other fantasy podcasts, the hype train is real on this guy, man, and we're going to continue to hear it. But, again, you've got to temper your expectations with rookie tight ends. That's just the case. He's not walking into a simple situation here either with the Buffalo Bills offense. No. And there's a lot of mouths to feed. So I think he's going to flash. I think there will be flashes of brilliance there. But it's not a guy you can draft to start on your team.
No.
Absolutely not. He's the tight end 16 for a reason. But I do think it's worth a stash. You never know. They start splitting him out and running 2 tight end sets with Dawson Knox in there as well. It could surprise some people. So, yeah, it's a lottery ticket. And if you can get a separator like that at tight end and he could be that guy, it's pretty exciting, man.
And if something happens to Dawson Knox, good luck. You know what I mean?
Or to Gabriel Davis, for that matter.
Yeah.
If they need to put him out in the slot more often, that could be very interesting. Yeah. All right. Number 6, who's the last guy for today's rookie review, Frankie? What do we have?
Last guy, we're going to go with Quentin Johnston out of TCU, guys. Love that picture, just for a variety of different reasons, for those who know we're Ohio State fans. So this is beautiful. But, okay, Quentin Johnston, guys, his ADP is 102. He's receiver number 44, right, in ECR ranking. Great situation, John. Great situation, guys. He's with the Chargers, okay? So, arguably, out of all of the receivers, in my opinion, he's walking into potentially one of the best, if not the best. And that is because the Chargers still have Keenan Allen, excellent receiver. They still have Mike Williams, excellent receiver. The problem with both those guys is both of them are getting old and both of them have been hurt. And they last year showed there were very few times that Mike Williams and Keenan Allen were both on the field at the same time. And so it's interesting, Quentin Johnston fits the mold of what they're looking for. Huge size receivers that have the ability to go downfield threat. He had 60 receptions last year, over 1,000 yards. He had 1,069, so 1,069 yards, 6 touchdowns. And what was interesting, and I'm going to shout this out because fuck you, Blue. He had 6 receptions against Michigan, 163 yards against Michigan, and 1 touchdown against Michigan. Okay. And the reason why also I'm calling that out is because that was the last game that he played in a very top tier defense against that of Michigan. Very, very good defense. And so I love the ability. For me, I see Quentin Johnston being that of like an AJ Green type of ceiling, or that of like a T Higgins. So my lookalike is a little bit more recent in that of T Higgins, but I could see this being very similar to that of like AJ Green. And to put it in perspective, guys, T Higgins fantasy football points for half PPR his rookie year was 162. I don't see that being completely out of the realm of possibility if Mike Williams goes down or Keenan Allen goes down. With the way they're throwing the ball and Justin Herbert, and now a new offensive coordinator because Kellen Moore is no longer there, right? It's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens, man. So I'm excited to see Quentin Johnston on this field. And I think this is a guy, man, that you can absolutely look to draft later in the draft. And again, just hold on to him and see how this pans out. He has the opportunity to be like that of the Amon-Ra St. Browns later in the season when he develops.
I love the comparison. T. Higgins, I think that gives people a really good image in their head of what kind of player he is. He's the heir apparent to Mike Williams. I mean, That's really what they're doing here. They're drafting, trying to replace the style of play that they enjoy, that Justin Herbert enjoys, which is a great sign because that connection with Mike Williams in the end zone, it's a real thing. And, the Chargers, in my mind, I think they're going to have a huge comeback season. Last year was really unfortunate. There were a lot of just calamities that happened. They were riddled with injuries. Justin Herbert was never right all season long. He was hurt all year. So coming in healthy, new offensive coordinator, picking up some extra weapons, like Quentin Johnston here. I think the Chargers are going to have a big comeback, and I think there's going to be space for Quentin Johnston to get in. I think they want to work him in anyway in 3 receiver sets. But I also think that, with the injury history we've seen, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are very likely to miss time at some point in the season. And that can really showcase Quentin Johnston. Having him on your bench to be able to throw in there against a good matchup if one of those other guys are down, and he could be the second look potentially for Justin Herbert, that's huge, man. Where is he currently going in drafts? How much money? How we have to pay for him right now?
So let me see. So right now his ADP is 102, John. So if we just do 102 divided by that 12, right? So he's going in about the 8th,
Math's
9th,
hard.
10th round. Math is hard.
Okay.
But yeah, probably around between the 8th and 10th round, depending on average. It's about the middle of the 8th all the way up to the early 10th. So, you got to kind of pay for him a little bit if you're thinking 8th. I probably wouldn't go that high for him, if I'm being honest with you, John. I like him in the 9th, to where if you think about it from a roster construction, you already got your running backs. You got your 2 starters. If you don't, you need to. And then from a receiver standpoint, you already have your starters. So you already have your first, second, maybe even your 3rd receiver. Maybe you peppered in a tight end at that point. So, and then maybe you have a quarterback. So now you have all of the stable that you need, the stability in your team at this point in time. Now it's just filling some holes, taking some flyers. And so if I can find him in that 9th, 10th, if he drops the 11th round, 100%, I'm definitely targeting this guy.
I'm going to be putting him in my queue if I've also drafted Mike Williams or Keenan Allen. One of those guys goes down, and you've got it's almost a handcuff situation. And we did that last year. Who's the number 3? Is it Josh Palmer? That was a guy Palmer. He was very high on the waiver wire. We talked about him often because of the injuries with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. And he had games where he could win you the week. I mean, he had some very solid games last year. So we're always looking at that third option in this passing attack. And I think he can return some really good pay here. Really
and
good
John,
value.
that's a great call out, guys. Joshua Palmer right now, I just looked at the depth chart. Quentin Johnston is a starter in a 3 receiver set right now. As of this point in time, Joshua Palmer's behind him, and just to pique some interest as well. We remember Jalen Guyton. If you remember that name, dude, when these guys went down, had a lot of opportunity for touchdowns. I mean, we're talking 70-yard touchdowns, 50-yard touchdowns. What I'm getting at is Herbert throws the ball down the field. It fits beautifully of what happened in TCU's offense when he was getting that ball from TCU's quarterback, who also was kind of cool, got drafted. But really, really awesome opportunity here.
Love it, man. All right, Frankie, thank you so much, brother. Your knowledge of these players in college and the fact of the research you do and watching the films. Thank you, brother. And wait till next week when we're doing the top 5. We're going to get into some guys. Hell, there's a 1st round draft pick in that group, man. Holy shit. We're going to talk about that too. You want to talk about poop your pants meter? I got a full diaper thinking about that guy. We'll talk about him next week, man. But thank you so much for listening, everyone. Season 3's kicked off. You know what? A few bumps and bruises there. I forgot to shout out the social media, to follow us in the beginning. Hey, whatever, man. We'll get into mid-season form very quickly. Trust me, folks. But thank you so much for listening, everyone. Thank you for subscribing and following. We really grew the podcast last year, both on audio and on video. I'm super excited to bring some new things this year. A couple of things we're looking at doing, little spin-off episodes, huh? Remember Down to Brown? We used to do that segment on the podcast. Down to Brown is going to be its own podcast this year. We're waiting to get the logos, everything ready. We're going to be starting that in a few weeks here once camp starts. So you'll be seeing information and details about how to subscribe to Down to Brown very soon. Frankie, listen, man, you're amazing. I love doing this with you. I haven't talked to you for a while, so I feel like now I'm complete. We're getting into August almost. Football's right around the corner, baby. Oh, I'm so excited, man.
Can't wait, brother. Let's go. And guys, just so you know, too, the next episode, Johnny mentioned, we're going to go 1 to 5 top rookies, but also, John, I think we should pepper in maybe how we performed last year with our call outs on the rookies to give you guys insight into just how accurate Johnny and I actually were That way you're not just taking our word for it, but the data's telling you it as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you can go back and listen to the rookie review of the past 2 years that we've done, and I got to tell you, we've nailed a lot. I mean, there was a lot of good information there. So I definitely go back and listen to the old episodes and see how we did, judge for yourselves. But thank you so much, everybody. Please follow us on social media, on Facebook and Instagram at Frankly Fantasy Football, and on Twitter at Frankly Fantasy F. And here on YouTube, you can see our beautiful faces. You can see my mountain man. I was in the mountains in the Pacific Northwest. That's why I've got the beard. Don't worry, I'll shave it. I'll look 10 years younger and a little better. But right now, I'm a silver fox talking about fantasy football, baby. I love it. And on YouTube, please subscribe and share, people. We love having the followers. It really helps the podcast, helps us do other things as far as advertising and better quality show for you all. So please subscribe on Frankly Fantasy Football on YouTube. Thank you so much, everybody. So excited to be here. We will see you all next week. Frankie, any parting words, my brother?
Let's go, baby. Football's here.
May the fantasy gods smile.